Alright guys, I'm back in my office again. We got another late night, 2 in a row. Last night was basketball game. Tonight is, we got a band concert, and so just trying to love on the students a little bit more, but want to make sure that I got this in. We are in Leviticus chapter 10. Nope, I apologize, we are in Leviticus chapter 11, where the header reads, ceremonially clean and unclean animals. And obviously these are for the offerings that we've been discussing about in the last couple of chapters of Leviticus, but we'll go ahead and jump right into it. Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Give the following instructions to the people of Israel. Of all the land animals, these are the ones you may use for food. You may eat any animal that has completely split hooves and chews the cud. You may not, however, eat the following animals that have split hooves or that chew the cud, but not both. The camel chews the cud, but does not have split hooves, so it is ceremonially unclean for you. The hyrax chews the cud, but does not have split hooves, so it is unclean. The hare chews the cud, but does not have split hooves, so it is unclean. The pig has evenly split hooves, but does not chew the cud, so it is unclean. You may not eat the meat of these animals or even touch their carcasses. They are ceremonially unclean for you. Of all the marine animals, there are ones you may use for food. These are ones you may use for food. You may eat anything from the water if it has both fins and scales, whether taken from salt water or from streams. But you must never eat animals from the sea or from rivers that do not have both fins and scales. They are detestable to you. This applies both to little creatures that live in shallow water and to all creatures that live in deep water. They will always be detestable to you. You must never eat their meat or even touch their dead bodies. Any marine animal that does not have both fins and scales is detestable to you. These are the birds that are detestable to you. You must never eat them: the griffin vulture, the bearded vulture, the black vulture, the kite, falcons of all kinds, ravens of all kinds, the eagle owl, the short-eared owl, the seagull, hawks of all kinds, the little owl, the cormorant, the great owl, the barn owl, the desert owl, the Egyptian vulture, the stork, herons of all kinds, the hoopoe, and the bat. You must not eat winged insects that walk along the ground. They are detestable to you. You may, however, eat winged insects that walk along the ground and have jointed legs so they can jump. The insects you are permitted to eat include all kinds of locusts, bald locusts, crickets, and grasshoppers. All other winged insects that walk along the ground are detestable to you. The following creatures will make you ceremonially unclean. If any of you touch their carcasses, you will be defiled until evening. If you pick up their carcasses, you must wash your clothes, and you will remain defiled until evening. Any animal that has split hooves that are not evenly divided, or that does not chew the cud, is unclean for you. If you touch the carcass of such an animal, you will be defiled. Of the animals that walk on all fours, those that have paws are unclean. If you touch the carcass of such an animal, you will be defiled until evening. If you pick up its carcass, you must wash your clothes, and you will remain defiled until evening. These animals are unclean for you. Of the small animals that scurry along the ground, these are unclean for you: the mole rat, the rat, large lizards of all kinds, the gecko, the monitor lizard, the common lizard, the sand lizard, and the chameleon. All these small animals are unclean for you. If any of you touch the dead body of such an animal, you will be defiled until evening. If such an animal dies and falls on something, that object will be unclean. This is true whether the object is made of wood, cloth, leather, or burlap. Whatever its use, you must dip it in water and will remain defiled until evening. After that, it will be ceremonially clean and may be used again. If such an animal falls into a clay pot, everything in the pot must be defiled, or will be defiled, and the pot must be smashed. If the water from such a container spills on any food, the food will be defiled, and any beverage in such a container will be defiled. Any object on which the carcass of such an animal falls will be defiled. If it is an oven or hearth, it must be destroyed, for it is defiled, and you must treat it accordingly. However, if the carcass of such an animal falls into a spring or a cistern, the water will be clean. But anyone who touches the carcass will be defiled. If the carcass falls on a seed grain to be planted in the field, the seed will still be considered clean. But if the seed is wet when the carcass falls on it, the seed will be defiled. If an animal you are permitted to eat dies, and you touch its carcass, you will be defiled until evening. If you eat any of its meat or carry away its carcass, you must wash your clothes, and you will remain defiled until evening. All small animals that scurry along the ground are detestable, and you must never eat them. This includes all animals that slither along on their bellies, as well as those with 4 legs and those with any feet, or with many feet. All such animals that scurry along the ground are detestable, and you must never eat them. Do not defile yourselves by touching them. You must not make yourselves ceremonially unclean because of them. For I am the Lord your God. You must consecrate yourselves and be holy, because I am holy. So do not defile yourselves with any of these small animals that scurry along the ground. For I, the Lord, am the one who brought you up from the land of Egypt, that I might be your God. Therefore, you must be holy, because I am holy. These are the instructions regarding land animals, birds, marine creatures, and animals that scurry along the ground. By these instructions, you will know what is unclean and clean, and which animals may be eaten and which may not be eaten. And that's the end of Leviticus chapter 11. What's interesting to me is, and I think it a little bit has to do with how Jesus kind of reflected on it when he says that although it's kind of, I don't want to say antagonistic of what's said here, but even Jesus said, what you put in your mouth is not what defiles you, it's what comes out of it. And that kind of speaks specifically against this passage. I would say directly to this passage. But I'm curious as to, I might have to look up the specific definition of defiled. And so in the previous chapters, if there was a break in what the expectation was, or taking part in something, then death was actually the response to it, not simply just being defiled. And so I imagine defiled, as far as my understanding of the word, is simply means to fall out of alignment with. And I'm not using that as a textbook definition. That's just how I would phrase it. And so I understand that, but why is it for some animals and not for others? I imagine that there's probably quite a few animals that are actually poor for our health. Like, I know when I think about sea creatures, I think about things that don't have scales or don't have fins. I know that those can be poisonous. I know when they say things that slink on their belly and have many feet, centipedes are often poisonous to us, things that we just genuinely shouldn't partake in. But I'm also curious as to why they identified other things, like why specific birds can be eaten and others can't. And I know that sometimes when they say certain things, like the animals with certain hooves, if they're bottom feeders, they're not good for you because of their digest. Like we've done, there's been certain scientific understandings and explorations of that, not so much that specifically align with the biblical approach to it, but really identify, hey, animals that don't fall in line with the animals that are clean to eat. A lot of the ones that are unclean are actually not good for us to eat, just in a, what do I want to say? Just in an executive process. No, what's the word I'm looking for? Just in a, maybe like a naturopathic way. Like, they're just not good for you. They're either bad for because it's high cholesterol, or they're poisonous, or there's just something about them that's just naturally not good for us to eat. And I know some people will say, well, bacon and certain pigs, and they're actually not very good for us to eat. I know that a lot of the way that we consume that animal is through processed foods, but it's not the cleanest meat that we can eat. And so I do think it's interesting that a lot of things align with just what our dietary preference should be. I know that's not a direct alignment because it's not for everything. So, because if you have like specific cuts of pork and things like that, that's not inherently a horrible. When we think about, nutritional density, pork's actually not that bad for you. But the process of how how the pig eats and how it turns it into the calories for our body isn't always great. Very high fat, not a very strong protein when we consider that. And so I just think it's interesting that a lot of things naturally fall in line with how our body would process those things anyway. And so I think that that's kind of cool, and that's sometimes the nerd part of me that appreciates how science is really us understanding God's language. And I know not everybody feels that way. And then some people say, well, what about the Big Bang? And what about all these other things? So who's to say that the Big Bang isn't simply saying God saying, let there be light? And that boom. And when they say, hey, make sure you don't eat these things, guys, they're ceremonially unclean. When in fact, sometimes like, no, some of these are poisonous, or some of these won't make you feel very good. And it's because of whatever these characteristics it identifies might not be directly related, but we just don't naturally see those connections. And so I actually really appreciate that as well. And so I'll let that be that. On that note, have a good night. God bless. I love you. Jesus loves you. And I'll be back for chapter 12 of Leviticus, where the header here reads, purification after childbirth. And so I'm curious to see what that looks like. It looks like it's going to be a very short passage, but I'm excited to get into it. But have a good night. God bless. I love you guys. Jesus loves you. And I'll see you tomorrow for chapter 12 of Leviticus. Have a good night.